This is part 2 of a series in which we'll revisit all of the Star Trek movies from worst to best. You can find a link to the playlist with all of the entries in the description below. Every time I tell people I hate this movie, they give me weird looks, surprised looks, or angry glares. That last look usually leads to arguments. What's weird about this is that I used to like the movie. Seriously, right after I saw it, I ranked it up with The Wrath of Khan. I watched it every day for the next week, and probably once a week for the 2 months following that. I have seen this movie probably as many times as any other Star Trek movie other than The Wrath of Khan or The Undiscovered Country. So obviously the movie didn't change. Why do I hate it so much? Let's start at the beginning. A giant ship flies out of a black hole. Now, I'm no theoretical physicist, but I've read Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, so I know enough about black holes to know that if they do turn out to actually be gateways in the space-time continuum, you wouldn't survive a trip through one. This is, of course, where all of the terrible physics starts. Now, Star Trek is filled with bad physics. I know this, but it's consistent bad physics, and to my mind, it's part of the universe. So I can live with bad physics. But there's bad physics, and then there's blatant stupidity. Why is the view screen a window? The entire command crew is just a few panes of fancy glass away from the void of space? Why? Also, why did the captain have to give the order to polarize the view screen when he got to the bridge? Why didn't the previous command officer do it as soon as they decided to face the ship at a star? Was he trying to make the bridge crew blind? Look, if I step through the whole movie listing gripes like this, we'll be here for a while, so I'll just pick some general issues to mention. First up, the lens flares. J.J. Abrams has been hailed by some as a visionary director. I would submit that his vision is to ensure that he's the only one with any left. By which I mean the visuals in this movie universally suck, because every one of them is fractured by at least one massive lens flare. People have complained about the shaky cam in this film. I have yet to notice it, because I can't resolve actual details on the screen because the entire thing is whited out, all the time. This isn't visionary directing, this is crap. Also, I don't think anyone involved in this production has an appreciation for how bright stars are. If this were an actual photo, and the white balance were adjusted enough to make the star look like that, you wouldn't even be able to see the glow from that engine, let alone a lens flare from it. Next general issue. The ship. What ship? Why, all of them! At the beginning of the movie, there's the Kelvin. This ship violates one of Gene Roddenberry's unspoken rules of starship design as recorded by the folks who designed the original Enterprise, which is one warp nacelle. They're supposed to come in pairs. And don't at me with examples from TNG. Apparently, canonically, the Enterprise D has 4 nacelles. Each of those pods is a dually. Now this is a minor niggle in comparison to the Enterprise itself, which looks fabulous if you manage to spot it through the lens flares, but refuses to adhere to both the laws of physics, Mr. Ye cannot change the laws of physics Scott shows up and the ship goes faster, how? And the laws of common sense. What, stuffing a whole section of apparently superfluous officers in between 2 rows of what look like fuel storage tanks is a bad design? Says who? But neither of these ships is as bad as the Narada. Sorry if it's hard to see because of, go figure, the lens flares. There is literally no shot of this movie without some in it. Yeah, the utterly forgettable ship captained by Darth Maul, or whatever that guy's name was. The Narada is supposed to be a mining ship from the 24th century, an era of sophisticated technology, so why do they need to drop a drill into a planet's atmosphere to use it when the 24th century tech has never had that limitation? And why is it all spiky? For what purpose did the Romulans design their mining ships like porcupines? And where, pray tell, would they store ore? Even the interior of the ship, which could be much larger if all the spines weren't there, has catwalks and platforms everywhere. What the heck for? How would that help them mine and transport minerals and materials? This is by far the worst designed ship in the history of sci-fi. And believe me, I pay attention to that kind of garbage. I mean, it doesn't even look good. I'm sorry, if I can't tell where the front of your sci-fi ship is, it sucks. The plot. It's goofy. Sure, making the whole thing happen in an alternate universe was a clever way to reboot Star Trek without automatically alienating your entire fanbase. But the cleverness ends there. Bad physics, plot holes, motivation gaps, and general weirdness define this script. I liked it for its one-liners, which are plentiful and good, and for its fan service, which is at least plentiful. But this movie ignores the one thing I really want from Star Trek. A story about a ship and her crew that shows humanity up against the unknown. That's the germ of all Star Trek ever, even Enterprise. I don't want a story about Kirk and Spock and their blooming bromance, I want a story about a ship and her crew. Frankly, aside from some jokes, I couldn't have cared less about the entire crew of the ship, and the ship itself was just a thing. Had the whole thing been torn to shreds by that black hole as it should have been, see bad physics above, and all hands had perished as well, I wouldn't have cared at all.